Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to this segment of Coach Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day, where the recitation from Marag Asa Bani Paktanki, compositions of the Bhagats. Today is the 8th in Asa Kabir Jio, composition of Bhagat Kabir Ji, and it's a 4-versed Shabad, 2 lines each. We will go line by line. And here is the Shabad, the first verse. Asa Hindu Turak Kaha te aaye, kin eh raah chalai, dil mein hai soch vichar kawade, best dojak kin pai. So this passage is a sharp rebuke, a critique, essentially, of organized religion, which comes with a whole facade of rituals. And so even though in this Sabad Kabirji is taking on the Muslim Qazi, he's equally forceful in his condemnation of the Hindu Pandit in other places. So you can gather immediately that Kabirji, from the mode of his questioning, is advocating reason, rationality, rather than blind belief. Not to mention personal accountability. He's asking the question. He's saying, who or where did Hindus and Muslims come from, because they weren't born as such? In other words, where do these labels come from? They're all man-made. They're convention. We conventionally believe ourselves to be Hindus, Sikhs, Christians, Sikhs, whatever. Kabirji is questioning that. And he's saying, who established these paths? Kini e raah chalaya. And he persuades us to actually reflect on this deeply. Dil mein hai soch vichar. And he says, who has seen heaven or hell? Bisht dojak kini pai. How can you tell who's gone where? These are mere polemics, he says. Kawade, quarrels, wrangling. So that's the setting. And then in the Rahau, he asks an even more pointed question of the Qazi. He says, Kaji, ta kavan kateb bakhani. Kateb is a reference to Semitic literature, to the Quran, specifically in the Indian context. So Kabirji is asking the Qazi, Kavan Kateb Bakhani, which book are you expounding on? Meaning, which scripture are you expounding on? And the reason for his question is, he says, it's read, recited by everyone that you advocated to, and yet I see that they suffer and eventually die without actually finding the right way or having the knowledge of the right way. Parat gunat aise sab hamare, kinhu nobody khabar na jani. Khabar na jani. Awareness. When he says khabar, it means nobody found self-awareness. But they kept reciting the scripture. So you see where Kabirji is going with this. And then the verse, he says to the Qazi that I'm not really buying the explanation that you're giving me for circumcision. Now he comes to the specific ritual of circumcision, sunnat as it's called. And so he says, सखत स्नेहो कर सुन्नत करिए मैं ना बदौगा पाई brother I'm not buying your argument. And what is the argument? Sakat Sineho, love for a woman. Kari sunnat kariye. So you're telling me, Kabir says, that circumcision is done out of love for women. But I don't buy that. Main na badauga badai pai. I don't buy this, brother. Because if the Creator, Ja re khudai mohe turk karega, apan hi kat jai. I would have been born circumcised if that were indeed the design of the Creator. So he's trying to isolate what are purely man-made customs and rituals. Blind faith is what he's criticizing. Then he goes on further. Again, an argument that you can't resist. He says, Sunnat kiye turk je hoega, sunnat kiye. If circumcision makes one a Muslim, aurat ka kya kariye? Then what about a woman? Aurat. Ard sariri nar na choda. First thing is you treat her as half-bodied, meaning she does not even have full status. You treat her as part of her husband's property. Ard sariri nar na choda. And you leave her out of circumcision because you can't. And then here is the clincher. Kabir says, if a woman cannot become a Muslim, tate Hindu hi rahiye. I prefer to remain a Hindu. Even though, as we know, Kabirji was not a great fan of the Hinduism practiced in his time, or even today for that matter. And in the end, he eventually says to the Qazi, Chhad Kateb, give up the Semitic scriptures. Chhad Kateb, Ram Paj, go and find union with the Ram, meaning yourself within. Don't be caught up in Semitic scriptures. Chhad Kateb Ram Paj Baure, calls him insane, crazy. Julam karat hai pari, you are actually inflicting tyranny, not only on the people, but also on yourself for not finding the way. And then he speaks for himself. He says, Kabira, pakadi take Ram ki. I have sought the support of Ram. Turak rahe pachihari, while you Muslims are wrangling about whether or not to do sunnat. So you see, Kabir wants us to get to the heart of the matter, to the essence, and not be worried about all the chaff around it. Get to the kernel. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh.